بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء وسيد المرسلين أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المأسومين المذلومين المنتخبين المنتجبين الذين كلامهم نور وأمرهم رشد ووصيتهم التقوى وفعلهم الخير وعادتهم الإحسان وسجيتهم الكرم لا سيما على الحسين المذلوم المقتول المجروح العطشان المذبوح من القفا في يوم عاشوراء في أرض كربلاء بلا جرم ولا خطأ الذي غسله دمه وكفنه رمال كربلاء مقطع الأعضاء مسلوب العمامة والرداء عليتنا كنا معكم فنفوز فوزا عظيما. قال الله تعالى في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم: والذين آمنوا أشد حبا لله صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Without a doubt, if I was to ask you what is the fundamental belief of your religion, from which the other beliefs, the other practices stem, what is that fundamental part of your faith? Every single person here would say Tawhid. That Tawhid and the belief in the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that fundamental stepping stone from which the other practices and beliefs are applied in our lives, and is that which begins the journey of a person towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. However, in the way that Tawheed and the belief in the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is of different levels, meaning one person's Tawheed and belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is greater and stronger than someone else's. For example, I can't compare the Tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that is in my heart to the Tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the heart of a prophet of God, or an infallible, or someone close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the way that Tawheed has levels, the scholars said that Tawheed also has different types. And as a servant gets closer to Allah Azza wa Jal, they pass by the different stations of Tawheed. They conquer a different part of the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For the journey of Tawheed begins with Tawheed fi dhat, Tawheed in the essence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we believe Him to be one and has no parts. This is the first type of Tawheed that exists. But scholars say gradually as a person develops and gets closer to their Lord and their heart is filled with iman and faith, they conquer different areas of Tawhid. So they begin to conquer, for example, the Tawhid in the af'al and the actions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or the Tawhid in sifat and the attributes, Tawhid in ibadah and worship. But we are also told of the final level of Tawhid that exists. And this is that level that I wish to very briefly discuss tonight. After the servant of God passes by all of these stations of Tawheed and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's oneness, they get to what is known as Tawheed fil mahabba, or Tawheed in love. Meaning this person now in his or her heart, all that is found is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if they love other than Allah azza wa jal, they love that thing because of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This was the station of Tawheed fil mahabba, Tawheed in love, where I love solely my Lord and anything enters into my heart because of my Lord, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And even though the discussion is technical, I wish to answer a number of questions about this topic of what is meant by the Tawheed of love and what are the signs of someone that has reached this station. And so my discussion is not the love of God. For that itself not only is a lengthy discussion, it is linked to this discussion. My discussion is the oneness of love. The first question that arises then about this discussion is, what is the vessel of love? If I'm told the highest station I can reach is the Tawheed of love, where is this love found? What is the vessel and the utensil within which this love is found? Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salatu wassalam answers that question. For Amir al-Mu'mineen very famously says, Inna hadhihi al-qulub aw'iyah. These hearts of yours are utensils and vessels. The utensil and vessel of love is the heart of the human being. For the heart, or literally that which is called qalb in Arabic, literally comes from that which is constantly changing or moving. Why? Because my physical heart is constantly moving and pumping. Likewise, the spiritual heart of the human being is such that the spiritual heart constantly changes. And scholars give a number of examples for us to understand what is meant by the spiritual heart. And there were those that explained it as a mirror. And in front of this mirror, constantly objects are being placed. And so naturally, this mirror is reflecting different images. Likewise, your heart is being affected constantly by that which is around it. Some said the example of the heart is a target that is placed and is shot at from all directions. Meaning your heart is something that a number of things or people are fighting for. And whatever is found in your heart becomes Amirul Insan, becomes the commander of that human being. Meaning what? Your actions are based on that which is in your heart. And so when that which in your heart changes, the actions that you perform change also. And so the vessel of this love, which is the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or any love, is the heart. And this is why in Hadith al-Qudsi, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to Dawood alayhi salatu wasalam, Farrigh li baytan. Empty out a house for me, Dawood. So Dawood alayhi salatu wasalam answers, Ya Allah, you are munazzah. You are greater than needing a house. It's us physical beings that require a house within which we stay, within which we rest. Anta munazzahun an dhalik. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala replies, my house metaphorically is the heart of the mu'min. And so this is the vessel and the container where this love is found. Before I can ask my second question, people are waiting at the door. I know we have moved forward already. If there is any space, please move as forward as you can. Rahimallahu man dhakara al-qa'im min al-Muhammad. For the love of Abu al-Fadl Abbas alayhi salatu wasalam, please recite a second salawat. Your third in honor of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam. Your fourth salawat for Umm al-Masa'ib Zainab. your fifth salawat in honor of Ali Al-Akbar alayhi salam. To hasten the reappearance of Sahib al-Asri wa Zaman, Ajlillahu ta'ala Farajuh al-Sharif, your final salawat. And so my first question has been answered when we speak about the Tawhid of love. Where is that love found? The heart of the human being. The second question, how can I be told to have this Tawhid of love and only have love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in my heart, when I myself from this minbar 2 nights ago said that love is something that is not in your hands. You can't control that which you love, who you love, the extent to which you love someone or something. The same question comes when I'm told love Ahlul Bayt alayhim wassalatu wassalam. How can I love when the entering of love in my heart is something that I have no control of? And so what is meant by the Tawheed of love? Love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only. I have no control of my heart. And so the scholars came to understand what is meant by this. Whenever I'm told I have to love enemies of Ahlul Bayt, I have to hate. How can I love and hate when these emotions enter into my heart without me knowing? And even if I wish to love someone, sometimes I hate them. Sometimes I wish to hate someone, I end up loving them. The answer to this question is that any action that I perform in this world, even the most mundane of tasks, have prerequisites, or that which in Arabic is known as muqaddimat. Prerequisites to perform a certain action. So for example, a person who wishes to come to this majlis, coming to this majlis has prerequisites. You had to get into your car, you had to drive here, you had to park, you put on black clothing. Any action has prerequisites. In the way that if I wish to pray salah, I have to find the qibla, I have to perform wudu, I have to get a turba. Prerequisites to an action. Scholars said when it comes to love, when I'm told I should have Tawheed in the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even though the entering of love or hatred in my heart is outside of my control, the prerequisites to that action are in my control. And so I have to perform the prerequisites. So for example, if I told someone, you need to love Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salatu wasalam, the prerequisite to that action is what? That I read about his life. I make an attempt to find out about the life of the Holy Imam. When I perform the prerequisite, Allah then places that love in my heart. And so the prerequisite is that which I have to perform. And I'll give you an example from Quranul Kareem. Quranul Kareem, I mentioned yesterday, speaks about Banu Israel. Banu Israel, when they settle with Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, after the parting of the sea, Musa alayhi salatu wasalam goes to get the Torah. Quran al-Kareem says, وَوَاعَدْنَا مُوسَى 30 لَيْلًا فَأَتْمَمْنَاهَا بِعَشْرٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first tells him, you will spend 30 days gaining the revelation in Mount Sinai. That 30 days then turns into 40. 10 days are added on. Now you have heard, I don't want to enter into that discussion. I wish to indicate one verse of the Holy Quran. You have heard that when Musa alayhi salatu wasalam goes there, during that time, these people end up doing what? A calf is made out of gold and they begin worshipping the calf. Quran al-Kareem describes their state very beautifully, because these people, in their heart was love of that calf and that idol. Where did that love get from? Where did that love come from? How did it get there? Quran al-Kareem says, وَأُشْرِبُوا فِي قُلُوبِهِمُ الْعِجْلَةِ بِكُفْرِهِمْ. Due to their previous disbelief, i.e. because they performed the prerequisites, that love of that idol entered into their hearts. Even though the love itself is not in my control, I have things that are in my control that affect love entering into my heart or hatred entering into my heart. To explain this further before I can continue the discussion, I'll give you one example. As I said, the discussion is technical. I'm trying to simplify it as much as I can. Of how in your hands is the muqaddimah and the prerequisite. Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam sees that his people wish to celebrate, they have a festival. If you look at different civilizations and cultures, some of them on their day of festival and celebration stay in their hometowns. Certain people, they have a festival, a celebration, a holiday, they stay in their houses with their family. Certain cultures and civilization, when they have a celebration, they leave their cities. Their practice is not to stay in their hometown. The people of Namrud, they have this one festival every single year and they don't stay in their city. All of them leave. So we've all heard what takes place when all of them leave. Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam goes and destroys all of the idols except for one. When these people then return from their festival and their holidaying, they see their idols have been destroyed. They know the only person that remained in this city, all of us had gone. The only person that remained was who? Ibrahim. And so now these people are emotional. Our deity or deities, our lords, our idols have been shattered into pieces. And so everyone needs to go out and search for Ibrahim and bring him to Namrud. Now there are certain people that are sent to find Namrud, but they don't know, search to find Ibrahim, but they don't know what he looks like. They wish to go and find Ibrahim, but they're not told what he looks like. They've never seen him before. So these people leave to find this person. Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam has a very specific quality in his life. The Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam says, Allahumma salli. Please recite another salawat. Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam says, مَا اتَّخَذَ اللَّهُ إِبْرَاهِيمَ خَلِيلًا إِلَّا لِإِطْعَامِهِ الطَّعَامِ وَصَلَاتِهِ بِاللَّيْلِ. The reason why Ibrahim became a Khalil and a friend of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is number one, he prays tahajjud, salatul layl. Number two, he feeds. He can't eat unless he has guests. He has to feed others. So Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, on the same day that he's destroyed these idols, wishes to eat. It comes to dinner time, he wishes to eat. He comes out of his house to see who is there that he can invite to this meal. When he leaves his house, he finds 3 or 4 people. These people were looking for who? Ibrahim, the breaker of our idols. But they don't realize this is him. So he invites them to eat. They said, this is no time of eating. We're looking for someone that has broken our idols. So Ibrahim says, what's his name? They said, Ibrahim. He said, I'll tell you where he is. I know where he is, but first eat. So when they're told this person knows where he is, let's eat with him. They ate the food of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam. After they've eaten the food, he said, you are looking for Ibrahim. He's sitting right in front of you. What am I trying to explain to you? Love itself may not be in your hands, but you can perform certain actions which allow that love to enter. Ibrahim is sitting right in front of you. He said, you are Ibrahim? He said, yes. Now they're in a big problem. Why? Because they have eaten someone's food as their as a guest in their house. And if we have eaten food as a guest in someone's house, now for us to arrest that person and take him in front of Namrud, it doesn't seem right. It's not really befitting that we first ate on his sofra. Now we wish to take him so that he can get killed. So they said, look, we have to take you. You broke our idols. However, take money from us. If you take money from us, we weren't your guests. It's as if we ordered food from a restaurant. We've paid the person, now we take you to Namrud. So Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam says, when I feed people, I don't feed for money. But if you wish to pay me something, pay me with one thing. They said, what? He said, do one sajda and prostration to my Lord. They said, that's it. Do one sajda and prostration, you can take me to Namrud. So the riwayah says they place their heads in prostration. That prostration becomes a reason that the love of Rabbul Alameen enters into their hearts. That when they lift their heads, they said, Amanna bi Rabbi Ibrahim. We believe in the Lord of Ibrahim. What did they do? That love entered into their hearts because they performed an action that they had control of. That led to the love entering into your hearts. And so this is what is meant when I'm told Tawhid fil mahabba is that in my heart I love only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Before I come to my third question, there's one point that is critical for us to understand. That sajda of theirs, that prostration of theirs, was a prerequisite to love. A sajda and a prostration is of two types. They performed sajda, they've never believed. They performed sajda, it led to love. Sometimes a prostration and a sajda is a prerequisite of love entering into your hearts. Sometimes sajda is the effect of that love entering into your hearts. Sujood is of two types. Sometimes I'm overcome by the love of my Lord, I fall into sajda. Sometimes so that I get that love, I fall into sajda. This is vital for you to remember. If these two preliminary discussions have been understood, the third issue then that comes is this Tawhid fil mahabbah, where in my heart is love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only. And wherever else enters is because of Allah Azza wa Jal. What are the stages of this love? I wish to explain to you the stages of this love and how a person can reach that station. The first stage is every single person here has a hierarchy of love, a list of love. Meaning what? There's certain things here right now today, you love them the least. You love that thing, but it's the least love that you have. Then there's something that you love more, or someone that you love more. And this continues in a hierarchy until you reach the top. So for example, today, if you think about your life, there's certain people you love them, but there's others you love more. There's certain actions that you love to perform, but there's others that you love more and desire more. Everyone has this hierarchy. And at the top of that hierarchy is that which you love the most. This crown always has a king. In other words, there's always someone who's at the top of the hierarchy. Someone or something. Whether you are aware of what that thing is or not. For some people, that which is at the top of that hierarchy is dunya. That which they love the most is wealth and this world. Other people have certain individuals they love the most. Many people, the crowned king of this hierarchy is themselves. I love most myself. The first stage of Tawheed fil Mahabbah is that I topple whoever is at the top of that hierarchy. Sometimes I have to topple my own throne. If I'm at the top, I need to place Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the top of the hierarchy. And so when I analyze which things I love the most, at the top is my Lord Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. However, the question comes, how do I know who is at the top? How do I know who is at the top of this hierarchy? And how do I know if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is there? And the answer is given is what is called in Arabic muzahama. Muzahama is when two things are clashing with one another. Like what? The sign of this first stage is muzahama. Two things clash together, meaning what? Meaning someone invited me to their house at one time. Someone else invited me another friend at the same time. We have muzahama. Both are clashing. I can't perform both. There's a conflict between both of these things. Which of those two do I choose? Which of those do I choose? I will choose the one that is higher in the hierarchy compared to the other. And so the way in which I can see who is at the top is that thing or person for whom I leave everything that I have. That thing or person is at the top of my hierarchy. This is the first stage of Tawheed of love. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has to be placed at the top. The second stage. The second stage is that love, any type of love, is of two types. For sometimes I love something because of it itself. Sometimes I love something because of that which it does or that which I get from it. Meaning what? Someone came to me, مثلا, says, Sheikh, we love you. So I heard what they're saying. The sentence continued. Your majalis are very nice. Meaning what? Meaning that person doesn't love me for me. That person loves something that I produce, something that I perform. Sometimes you love someone because they cook very nice food. This is one type of love. There is a type of love where I love someone not because of them. I love what they give, that which they perform, some of the qualities they have. Another type of person I love because of them. Naturally, which love is purer and greater? The love of the thing in itself, not because of what it gives to you. And that's why to understand this, look at the love of the mother and the love of the child. Two types of love, both are different. The mother, her love is different to the love of the child. Why? Because when the child loves the mother, it loves the mother because from the mother I get milk. And there is safety there. And there is nutrition there. Their love is based on what that child gets from the mother. As for the love of the mother, this is pure love. Meaning even if the child doesn't give me anything. Often you hear this, the mother, even if the child is disobedient to the mother still has love for the child. Why? Because this is love for something in and of itself, not because of that which it produces or gives me. The same thing comes with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The second stage of Tawhid in love after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the top of my hierarchy. That I'd give everything for Allah Azza wa Jal. The second stage is my love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is for Allah Azza wa Jal only. Meaning what? Meaning some people love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because He gave me life. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has showered me with His bounties. This is okay. It's a type of love. It's not the perfect type of love. In fact, Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells him, make my servants love me. Make them love me. So Musa says, how is it that I can make them love you? Ya Rabb al-Alameen. He says, you can make them love me by telling them about my bounties. In other words, I start to love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from the first type. I love Him due to what He gave me. The second type is that which is of Tawheed and Mahabbah. Where even if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me nothing. That's why you find this line in certain supplications. Even if you were to place me in the hellfire. Even if you were to place me in the hellfire, my love for you wouldn't change. This is the second stage. I gave you a sign for the first stage. The sign for the first stage was muzahama. Two things clash. You give preference to that which you love the most. There is also a sign for this second stage. And that is no matter how much difficulty a person has, that love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't change. Let me give you an example so I can take the discussion further. No matter what state you're in, that love doesn't change. Nabiullah Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, the riwayah says, asks Allah Azza wa Jal, I wish to see that servant of yours who currently in this area is the biggest worshipper. Who is it that you take to be your biggest worshipper and abid at this time? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, no problem, I'll show you who the greatest worshipper of mine is. Jibreel shall show you. Jibreel descends down. Jibreel says, oh Musa, I'll take you to that great worshipper. When you think of worship, what do you think? When you think of worship, you think of salah, prayer, constant worship, constant supplication. So Musa alayhi salatu wasalam expected that when he's told of the biggest worshipper, he'll go and he'll see someone in sujood and prostration and prayer. So I was taken to a person, they describe where he was, I don't need to mention that. I was taken to a person who is sitting. And it's very obvious that this person is unwell. He has a type of illness. And this person is doing dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Musa alayhi salatu wasalam saw him and says, Ya Allah, this person is the biggest abid, the biggest worshipper. I don't see him doing worship. I don't see him in salah. I expected someone to be praying. Qa'iman qa'idan. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, speak to him and see what happens now. So Musa alayhi salatu wasalam is watching. Jibreel says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordered me at this time to take this person's eyesight. He's already very unwell. Maybe he's at the end of his life. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordered me to take his eyesight. See what happens. So Musa says, I'm watching Allah. Jibreel comes and whatever he does, he takes his eyesight. That person becomes blind. As soon as he becomes blind. The riwayah says, he says, oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you gave me these two benefits and I enjoyed this ni'mah. When you took them away from me, I'm happy with what you have done. Then he says, Ya Bar, oh the one who is benevolent and has given me bounties. Musa alayhi salatu wasalam says, I saw that he's very thankful. I came up to him. I introduced myself. I said, I am someone, whatever dua I do is answered. Whatever supplication I do is answered by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Would you like me to supplicate for you so that your eyes are given back? He said, no. He said, if my Lord wished to take them away from me, and he wished for me to be without eyesight, I shall remain without eyesight. So Musa alayhi salatu wasalam says, I heard you say something at the end just now. You said Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is benevolent and has showered you with ni'mah and bounties. What bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala do you have? You're unwell, you're alone, you don't have money, now your eyesight has gone. What bounty of your Lord do you have? I said the second type or the second stage of Tawheed in love is I love him for himself, not because of the bounty and the riches and the prosperity that he has given me. Musa says, what have you got from Allah that you said, Ya Bar? He said, oh individual, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in this whole area and city that I live, the only person that believes in Allah Azza wa Jal is me. Allah has given me his love and his belief. This is the greatest bounty that I could ask for. And so the second stage of Tawheed in love is this. The third stage, once now at the top of that list, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for him, not because of what he gives me. The third stage then is I see that love is of different intensities. I see some people more engrossed in love than others. The highest level, which is that Tawheed in love, is when the intensity of the love is great. And the scholars then come to explain how that comes about. If you think about it, how is it that you love something? How is it that you love something more? The answer that is given is the intensity of love comes from ma'rifah, cognition and understanding. So the more I understand something and have knowledge of it, the more my love for it increases. What do I mean? If I have something beautiful, we're assuming that the thing I have is beautiful. The more I unravel its secrets and understand what it is, the more I shall love it. So I have a diamond. I took this diamond to be beautiful. The more I understood the beauty of it, the more I was told about where it came from, how rare it is, the more I understood its purity, the love that I have for it gradually shall increase. Ma'arifah and understanding causes that love to increase. Take another example. I came to you and I described to you a certain type of food that I had eaten. I said, this is the best thing I've had in my life. You've never heard it, you've never seen it, you've never smelt it. I've described it to you. When I've described that thing that I ate to you, that dish that I ate, a picture of it enters into your mind, you start to have a desire for it. You haven't tried it, you haven't seen it, but you have a desire for it. I started describing it to you more, your understanding increased, your desire increased. Until eventually I said to you, tomorrow I'll make that same dish for you, you can try it. So you came to my house and you could smell the aroma. As soon as you smelt the aroma, your understanding reached, your ma'rifah reached one higher level. When you smelt the aroma, your love also increased. Then I placed it in front of you. When I placed it in front of you and you saw what it looks like, again your desire for it increased once more. Then you tried it. Once you tried that which I had described to you, now you see that you love that which is placed in front of you. Then someone else cooked it for you much better. Again, your love increased. So the more understanding you have of a certain thing, naturally the love you have for that thing increases. The same thing comes with human beings. If there's a beautiful human being and you don't know them that well, the more you understand about their inner beauty, the more your desire and love for them increases. There may have been certain people you've known for 10 years, you don't know them that well. All of a sudden you find out a piece of information about them that changes your perspective, and now you love them much more. The third quality, therefore, of that Tawheed in love is that Tawheed has reached the highest level, and that only comes with ma'rifah and understanding. I gave you a sign for the first. I gave you a sign for the second. What is the sign for this third one? The sign for this third stage of Tawheed in love was explained to us by Isa alayhi salatu wassalam. For Nabiullah Isa passes by a group of people. The narration says this group of people that he passes by, he sees them to be very thin, very pale, as if they are affected by something. So Isa alayhi salatu wassalam stops. They look unwell. What's happened to you? Why is it that you're so pale and thin? They said, Ya Nabi Allah, it's because we have heard of the punishment of the Akhirah. This punishment of the Akhirah is keeping us like this. When people truly understand certain realities, it affects their body. It affects their appearance. It says, because we have heard of the punishment of the Akhirah, this is our state. Isa alayhi salatu wasalam says, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save you from that which you are fearful of. You have this much fear, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will keep you safe from it. The narration says he continues further. As he continues further, he sees another group of people. This group of people were even thinner, were even paler. Their condition was even worse. He stopped them. He asked them, what's wrong with you? Why is this your state and condition? They said, Ya Nabi Allah, Ya Isa, because of desire of the paradise and heaven. For that has affected them even more when we heard of what is prepared for us. This is our state. So, he says the same thing. That which you have so much desire for, that this is your state, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give it to you. Then he passes by the last group of people, and he saw them the palest, the thinnest, in the worst condition. So he asked them, what is your issue? Why is this your state? They said, Ya Isa, neither are we, is this our state because of the fear of Akhirah, nor is this our state because of love of Jannah. This is our state because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's intense love has entered into our hearts. Because this love has entered into our hearts, this is the result. The riwayah says there was one quality of them. And this is the sign of the third stage of this Tawhid of love. The third quality, the quality that they had, this third group, is nur, and light was emanating from their foreheads. And so Isa alayhi salatu wasalam says, Antumul muqarrabun. You are those that are close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If these three discussions have been understood, and you've understood the three stages of the Tawheed of love, someone may ask me the question, why did I discuss this on the night of Ashura? The answer is simple. For those that have spoken about the great stations of Sayyid al-Shuhada, the master of the martyrs, one of the stations that they have mentioned, one of the stations that were reached by Sayyid al-Shuhada was Tawheed of love. And he showed this in so many different parts of his life, and he showed this on the day of Ashura. For I said the first is that at the top of that list is only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Of that hierarchy is only Allah azza wa jal. And I said the sign of it is what? When two things clash, you always give precedence to Allah azza wa jal. Didn't we see this in Karbala on the day of Ashura? For on one side you put a 6-month-old child. How much love and care does a person have for a young child, a young baby? On the other side, put the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and what Allah wishes. Hussein chooses what Allah wills. Even if it means my young child, when that muzahama comes, that clash comes, he chooses what? He chooses what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala desires. And so he is Allah, on the top of that hierarchy is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He himself says in Dua al-Arafah, he says, you are the one that azalt al-aghyar an qulub ahibba'ik. You are the one that removes everyone else from the heart of the ones you love. This was the first stage. I said, what was the second stage? The second stage is that something I love, something bidhat. Sometimes I love something bil arad. Sometimes I love something for them. Sometimes I love something because of what they give to me. The one who loves Allah for Allah is greater. The sign of it was what? Even in the most difficult times, that love remains. How did I find this on Ashura? Likewise, Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salatu wasalam comes and says, Imam Zainul Abidin says, لَمَّا اشْتَدَّ الْأَمْرُ بِالْحُسَيْنِ. On the day of Ashura, لَمَّا اشْتَدَّ الْأَمْرُ بِالْحُسَيْنِ نَذَرَ إِلَيْهِ مَنْ كَانَ مَعَهُ. Those that were with Abu Abdullah al-Hussein looked at Sayyid al-Shuhada and they saw him in a state different to everyone else. Ya Ali ibn al-Hussein, what did they see? What was the state of Hussein? He says the other people, the other companions, when matters got worse, when things became more difficult, their bodies became stiff. They started losing color from their faces. We saw they looked distressed. Imam Zayn al-Abidin says, but Hussein salamullah alayhi, when things became more difficult, the opposite happened. His body seemed more relaxed. There was more color and light in his face. And we could see nothing but the signs of his love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The second stage is that love put me in that situation, still I have love for my Lord. That love is for my Lord and no one else. I said, what was the third stage? The third stage of that Tawhid in love is I have intense and great amounts of love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What was the sign? The sign was Nur came from the foreheads of those people. Where did I find this? In Ashura. The books of Maqtal say that when Sayyid al-Shuhada becomes Ka'batul Suyuf, when he's covered by arrows and swords and he falls on the ground, and it comes to the time for his holy head to be separated from his holy body. You will read that a number of people came and tried to separate his head. That they would be the killer of Imam al-Hussein. One person comes, he runs back. Another person comes, he runs back. One person describes what he saw at that time. He says, I ran to the body of Hussein. I ran back saying, شَغَلَتْنِي نُورُ وَجْهِهِ. That which prevented me from killing is such nur and light was emanating from his face. This was the third sign. And the third stage of Tawheed, of love. I said there is a critical thing you need to remember. A sajda sometimes is done as a prerequisite to love. Sometimes it's an effect of love. Hussein does a sajda on the 10th of Muharram. That sajda, some say the last thing he does is his head falls in prostration. This wasn't that which was done to gain love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It was the expression of love that Hussein had for his Lord. The last thing he does, he places his head in sujood. On a night like this, Hussein salamullah alayhi is busy in worship and ibadah. He comes to the different tents. He sees what people are saying. There is one woman who has 2 young children. She comes and says to her children, on the battlefield, young girls do not go. And as for you, my son, you are a 6-month-old child. I have nothing to give Hussein on the day of Ashura. I say, oh, mother of Abdullah al-Radhi, Aliyun al-Asghar, you gave your 6-month-old son on that day. You gave Ruqayya in Sham also. For every night of Ashura, I can't help but to mention Mirza Qumi. Mirza Qumi is a great scholar, author of the book Qawaneen. Mirza Qumi, before he used to teach, once a week, every so often, before he goes on the minbar to teach his lesson, he gets a khatib and an orator to recite Musibah of Sayyid al-Shuhada. But he would always ask, whoever recites the Musibah, he would always tell them, recite the Musibah of the 6-month-old child of Hussein. Some have called him Aliyun al-Asghar in the books, others have called him Abdullah al-Radhi. Ibaratuna shatta wa husnuka wahidu. Doesn't make a difference. He would always tell the khatib and the orator recite the Musibah of the 6-month-old child. So once someone asked him, why do you tell us to always recite the Musibah of the 6-month-old child? Listen to his answer. He says there is a difference between all of the shuhada and the martyrs and this young martyr. He said, what's the difference? He says, all of the martyrs on that day were able to defend themselves in some shape or form. This 6-month-old child is the only one that cannot defend himself, which is why he is Babul Hawa'ij. Whenever I have a haja that I cannot answer, I do tawassul through the 6-month-old child of Aba Abdullah, and that is why the poet says, Ma tasabburu fi intidharik أيها المحيي الشريعة كم ذا القعود ودينكم هدمت قواعده الرفيئة تنعى أصوله فروعا وفروع تنعى أصولا. The poet directs his speech to Sahib al-Zaman. He says, أترى تجيء فجيئا بأمذ من تلك الفجيئة. Is there any tragedy greater than this tragedy? Which tragedy? He says, حيث الحسين على الثرى خيل العدايا طحنت ضلوعا. Hussein's body is on the ground and the horses crushed the ribs of Aba Abdullah. Then he would say, وَرَضِيعُهُ بِدَمِ الْوَرِيدِ مُخَذَّبٌ فَاطْلُبْ رَضِيعًا. A time comes on the 10th of Muharram. All of Hussein's companions and supporters have gone. Aba Abdullah enters into the battlefield. He says, هل من ناصر ينصرني هل من مغيث يغيثني. Suddenly Hussein says, I could hear the women crying in their tents, and so I returned to ask, why do they cry? When he enters into the tents, they said, your 6-month-old child heard your cry and heard your call. Abdullah has fallen from his cot on the ground. Hussein takes his young child. He wishes to give it to his sister Kulthum. Kulthum says, Ya Aba Abdullah, your child is thirsty. Get some water for Abdullah al-Radhi. Hussein says, I took the 6-month-old child. I went towards the battlefield. He places him in front of the army of Umar ibn Sa'd. He places Abdullah in front of the army. Narrations would say Abdullah sticks out his tongue because it is dry without water for 3 days. Hussein places him on the ground and says to them, إن كان للكبار ذنب فما الذنب لهذا الرذيع. If you have a problem with me, what is your problem with this young child? Suddenly Umar ibn Sa'd says, all of our army shall become the army of Hussein. اقطع كلام الحسين. Stop Hussein from speaking. Umar ibn Sa'd orders Harmala. Harmala says, I took a 3-pronged arrow. Harmala says, I tried to aim the arrow once, then I put the arrow down. I aimed it a second time. I placed the arrow down. Someone says to him, Harmala, you are the best archer in all of Arabia. Do you hesitate? Listen to the answer of Harmala. He says, whenever I aim my arrow at the neck of this child, I see one of the tents is moving, as if the mother of this child is watching. They cover his eyes. He takes the 3-pronged arrow, shoots it at the neck of Abdullah al-Radhi. من الوريد إلى الوريد from one side of the neck to the other. From one side of the neck to the other, Hussein's beard is covered with the child's blood. Hussein walks forward 7 times. He says, Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Hussein goes towards the tents. He holds the baby in his hands. He covers the baby with his abba. He goes towards the Mukhayyam. The sister of Abdullah comes running. Ruqayya comes running. She says, Ya abata hal suqiya akhi. Has my brother been given water? Ya Hussein opens the Abba. They see the body of Abdullah. The mother comes running. She says, Amithluhu yunhar. Even is a child like this slaughtered on that day. What does Hussein do? He takes the child. He goes to the back of the tents. He takes out his sword. He digs a small grave in the way that Ali would have buried a grave for Muhsin. Hussein buries and builds a grave for Abdullah. He buries him. A time comes after the 10th of Muharram. Shabbar says, I counted the heads of the shuhada. I saw one head is missing. They said, this is the head of the young child. What does he do? He tells all of his horsemen, take your spears and daggers, place them on the ground of Karbala until someone strikes his spear. A young child comes out. He says, I cut the head of the... على لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. إلهي بالحسين الوجيه وجده وأبي وأمه وأخي والتسعة المعصومين من ذريته اغفر لأوليائنا وكف عنا أعداءنا اشغلهم من أذانا وأظهر كلمة الحق واجعلها العليا وأدحث كلمة الباطل واجعلها السفلى إنك على كل شيء قدير. رحم الله من يقرأ الفاتحة تسبقها الصلوات.